Voyage to Deep Space Nine, where security officer Odo must confront a notorious criminal from his past.
He went to prison for murder. I sent him there.
Now, justice becomes an issue of life and death.
You're not going to take the law into your own hands.
Watch me. He was afraid that Odo would kill him.
Who might want to frame you for murder?
I am temporarily relieving you of duty.
Next time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
There's a bigger issue here. Just because a group of people belong to the Federation, it does not mean that they are saints. The trouble is Earth. On Earth, there is no poverty, no crime, no war. You look out the window of Starfleet headquarters and you see paradise. Well, it's easy to be a saint in paradise. Out there, all the problems haven't been solved yet. Out there are no saints, just people. Angry, scared, determined people who are going to do whatever it takes to survive.
What I want to know is, out of all the stories you told me, which ones were true and which ones weren't?
My dear doctor, they're all true.
Even the lies.
Especially the lies.
On behalf of the Bajoran government
And the Promenade Merchants Association.
I officially welcome you to Deep Space Nine.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to Especially the Lies, the Deep Space Nine podcast. We are a part of the Front Row Network at NPR Illinois Community Voices, and we're a group of folks who are watching Deep Space Nine for either the first time or the umpteenth time. And we are here today to discuss the third episode, or fourth if you're counting Emissary as two, A Man Alone. I am Scott, and with me is
Emily,
Christopher,
Prentice,
Blake,
Shannon,
and Jessi.
We have a few folks out, but it's the holiday season, so we'll just roll with it. And a reminder before we get started to please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. We have our YouTube and our podcast linked down below, so you can listen to either the audio or watch the video version that is all both released at the same time. Also, be sure to go over to either Apple, Spotify, or Audible and leave us a review. That will really help us get the show rolling and get some folks listening. We've already got quite a few folks on our social media accounts, so if you have not joined us over there, the links are down below as well. And thank you to our Facebook folks who have already got the ball rolling with causing some interesting conversations to be had. Apparently, Jessi's hot. Apparently.
Was that on this page?
No, that was on the other show.
That's what I thought.
Oops. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe not. Maybe
husband's
our
like,
Facebook isn't as good as I thought it was.
my husband's like,
Do
God
better.
damn, Facebook is messy. They're like, somebody just sent me an alert that said somebody thinks my wife is hot. He's like, I've never gotten a fucking alert from that page ever, but all of a sudden they need me to know. I was like, how you feel about that? He's like, I don't fucking care.
So our DS9 Facebook folks, do better. Do better.
Jessi is not hot, by the way. It's fine.
I don't know what we're talking about. We're all hot. Everyone.
Most of my hair is gray at this point, so just have those fantasies. Well, yeah.
You need to work on your confidence. I'm hot as fuck. I don't know what's wrong with y'all.
Yeah, my give a fuck has long gone. So
I've known you for 20 years and I've never known you to have one.
well, that's probably the truth.
This is true.
Okay.
Well, we're here to discuss A Man Alone, which is an Odo-centric episode. We'll get started with our synopsis and then go into our first impressions from everybody, our newbies first, and then our oldbies second, and then just talk about the episode in general and go from there. So, Prentice, I believe you have a synopsis for us, sir.
That I do. Ibudan, a criminal Odo has dealt with before, returns to Deep Space Nine, only to be murdered shortly after, leaving Odo to be the prime suspect. Jake and Nog's troublemaking prompt Keiko to do something helpful for the station's children.
So we'll go into first impressions. For those who are just joining us for the first time, we're doing a little switch up from the last show to where some of our newbies are oldbies and so forth and so on. But the folks here today who have not watched the show at all, aside from the first 3 episodes is Christopher, Jessi, and Shannon. So let's go to Shannon first. First impressions on A Man Alone.
I thought the comment or the learning that Odo hangs out in a pail when he's just chilling was very interesting. And I'm like, if I just had to liquefy into something, it would not just be like a bucket on the floor. I'm going to be in something fancy, some sort of nice, at least a wine glass. I found that very odd. I also thought that the doctor that I've not been a fan of acted totally different in this. Like he was trying to be all suave and smooth, and it still was just weird. Not sure what to think about him still. Yeah, mob mentality is not a good thing. Those are my first impressions.
Nazis bad. Jessi, first impressions. I don't know why I said Nazis bad and then went right to Jessi, but there you go.
I don't know how to feel about that. Like, okay. Yes, they are. Let's start there. I almost feel weird saying this, but I'm enjoying this show a lot. I find myself watching it and I don't hate it and I don't question my life choices. And I like a lot of the characters. So I'm finding myself really liking Odo, which I didn't know was possible. But like, as I was watching it today, I was like, no, this dude's pretty like decent. The doctor even stopped pissing me off a little bit today. Like, yes, he's still kind of dopey, but there were moments in this show that he was on it and you were like, oh, okay, I can kind of see what everybody's talking about. Is it Kira? I continue to just really enjoy her. The whole show I had a good time watching it and I didn't even have to nap today. So there's that.
It's positive. Christopher.
So I thought, my first impressions about this episode was that this was, you had Odo's main storyline, but this episode was really about relationships and how they change. The relationship between Commander Sisko and Dax and Odo and Kira and Odo and the Bajorans just in general. You also have a kind of a relationship storyline between Chief O'Brien and his wife. You see them arguing and fighting at the beginning. Jake and Nog, and there's a relationship forming there. So that was my impression about this episode. That was my takeaway, was that this was about relationships.
Now we'll go over to the folks who have watched the entire series at least once, twice, or maybe 100 times. Prentice, what do you got?
Couple different things. One, I'm just reminded of how much I hated the spandex that these kids had to wear back in the early 90s. I felt sorry for Sherlock Lofton, a.k.a. Jake. I'm like, my God, at 13 years old, you had to wear spandex like that. That's the first observation. But seriously, a couple different things. The school, the way it was set up, it leads to something that's going to blow up in a later episode. The comments that Sisko made about the difficulties of trying to educate kids from different backgrounds. That was a great setup for something that's going to play out later this season. So I kind of liked that. I didn't notice that years before. It gave me also the mystery vibe of the week kind of feel. It was a little bit like Scooby-Doo, especially what they did in the end. I was like, okay, this is very Scooby-Doo-ish. You have the mask come off and you find out it was him all along. Okay, got it. So that was pretty interesting, just seeing that. Also, Keiko's character, I did not put two and two together. I understand she's the same actress that had been in MASH, the same actress that had been in The Three Body Problem, which just came out on Netflix earlier this year. So she's been around for years, and she looks so drastically different now than she did when she was in Deep Space Nine. And yet again, we have Sisko reasserting himself. I'm noticing he's playing this role throughout the season where he's being very nice and polite in the beginning. Then he has to go ahead and throw down a gauntlet and say, this is going to happen my way. So you had that really nice conversation with Odo in the beginning to say, like, yeah, I hear your concerns and things of that nature. And Odo's like, it's about justice and we need to do this. And he said, no, this is not happening on my watch. You're going to do as I say. So this is the second time he's had that kind of encounter. First, it was with Kira. Now with Odo, so I'm just noticing a pattern. We're seeing him assert himself in his leadership during the first season of this show. And also, I want to mention the work by Michael and Denise Okuda looking at the paneling. And it reminded me of the old Palm Pilot, where they were looking at the passenger manifest, right? This is supposed to be 1993, and this is futuristic for that time. But looking at what they did remind me of an old Palm Pilot I had back in the 2000s. Other than that, the episode was decent. It's kind of a slow roll, but it's kind of setting things up for bigger surprises that's going to be a little bit more interesting as the season plays out.
I'm glad we've already had our first Okuda reference, because those two, that they're a married couple, have been proactive in making the world of Trek since the Next Generation into Deep Space Nine, and they are still working on Trek to this day. Dennis Okuda posted something about Section 31, which is the new movie, just recently. Was really involved in redoing a lot of the sets for Star Trek Picard a few years ago, and so forth and so on. And those guys, they're fans first. They were fans of the original series, and both kind of found their ways to the production and have been there for over 30 years. And they're both amazing people, which is also positive as well, too.
Just for a note, for anybody that's a fan of paying attention to the work and the graphics, if you follow them on Facebook, for example, this past year was the what was it, the 25th or 30th anniversary of Star Trek 6 coming out, and they were sharing a bunch of behind the scenes of how they put the graphic panels together for the Enterprise B, for the updated Enterprise D bridge. They were sharing a whole bunch of images from putting those together, how they made them. So anybody that's likes to nerd out over that stuff, I would highly recommend following their social medias. And if you're wanting to see some of their newer works also, they do a lot of the graphics on For All Mankind, which highly recommend that one too.
Yeah, if you're not watching For All Mankind, do it now, immediately. It is such a good show. And it's made by Roland D. Moore, who was a writer on DS9 for a while, and he's kind of referred to it as Proto Trek. So it's very, very good. Emily, what do you got?
It's not one of my favorite episodes, but I still enjoy it. What I do appreciate about this episode is it shows Odo's precarious situation that he's in. He's still on the station. He worked for the Cardassians. He did security for Cardassians. He's the only one of his kind on this station, and he hasn't really made a lot of friends with the Bajorans because of his work with the Cardassians. So it really...
I wasn't going to say anything,
no,
but of
I
all
thought
the
that,
people
like,
who were
son of
going
a
to
bitch.
make that problem,
God damn it.
I was not expecting it to be you, but okay.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either, but apparently I had a brain glitch. But it does really highlight how he's in a really awkward situation and how it was so easy for a mom mentality to be built against him on really not great evidence. I mean, the whole thing looks really suspect, like it's too much of a setup for him. I do appreciate how they highlight his situation and that he's really in an uncomfortable spot.
Blake.
So for me, this episode, I don't think it's necessarily one of the best episodes of the season, but I do appreciate this is where you can kind of start getting a feel that they're doing things a little differently. And looking at even some of the stuff Michael Piller, Ira Stephen Bear, and others have said, is usually Star Trek existed of you had your A plot, and then sometimes you had this smaller B plot, and the two very seldom interacted. But when you've got the setting of this station, you can have these multiple plot points that are going to interact with each other differently. And they compared it to Hill Street Blues, actually, was the comparison they made, where you can have these multiple plot points. So you've got the plot point of O'Brien and his wife arguing. Well, you also have this other plot point of the relationship with Cisco and Dax and Bashir and how all that plays in. And these interact within the same spaces, and they're happening together, but also separately. So you really get a different way of storytelling in this episode. And I think really what kills the episode for me is, as mentioned, the Scooby-Doo ending, where they pull the mask off. All it needed was I would have got away with it if it wasn't for those damn meddling doctors. I mean, that's like all it needed to hit full Scooby-Doo at the end. But I like where it's going. It does get into the background of characters. It starts to develop some of our principal cast, particularly you start to see a relationship between Quark and Odo that starts off with this one. And I honestly think those are two of the better actors in the show at this point, coming into it and the roles that they're playing. You see the friendship with Jake and Nog forming. But the other thing to keep in mind with this one also is this was actually the first of the regular season produced. So even though it came in second after the pilot, this was the first one they actually filmed and produced after Emissaries. So they're still really settling into their roles at this point.
Yeah, you guys have said most everything that I want to say. The reason why I do enjoy this episode a lot is because it's our first really true Odo episode, and Odo is my favorite character. I love Odo to death. Rene Auberjonois is and was an amazing actor, and we'll get a lot more out of him as we go. But I do like seeing that even here at the beginning, we're not seeing somebody who's in Starfleet. You know, again, for those who have watched Trek before, Star Trek is utopia. You know, the humans coexist and everyone is wonderful, blah, 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 blah. With Odo, that's not his take. His take is, I can go knock some heads and find justice, and that's what I want to do. So Cisco and him have to go back and forth on that. And I do love the fact that we've got some characters here, not just Odo, but mainly Odo in this episode, who don't prescribe to what the Federation and Starfleet usually bring to the table. And that conflict is going to make a lot of good stories and good episodes for this show. But it's also the reason why a lot of Trek fans don't like Deep Space Nine, because of that conflict. So let's go ahead and start talking about as Blake pointed out, the several different plots that are going on. And probably the easiest one to start out with is the Keiko plot with school and her interactions with Miles as well too. Jessi.
So I did get a kick out of it because it's kind of really touched home with me, because so when I think it was Odo said, I don't know why people couple, right? When they're talking about like, I don't know why humans feel the need to cohabitate. And you hear them arguing about her not liking where she is. That's a very common discussion. I'll choose my words wisely, in my household about where we live, because we live in Illinois and he's from Virginia. There's a lot of discussions about wanting to go back there because he doesn't like it here. And O'Brien was a lot nicer than I am. I'm like, well, then go. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you can leave. I don't know. He's a glutton for punishment and he stays here. But I like that really touched base with me when I was watching it, because I was like, yeah, why do people couple? I do wonder what, like, sometimes why, we find that one human and we're like, this is my human. And that human annoys the shit out of me more than any other human in the whole world.
Because they know you best.
I don't, and that's like, I swear to God, like he got a handbook when he was born. Like, hey, when you meet your wife, here's all of her buttons and here's how to push them one by one until she wants to lose her shit. But yeah, it was that really, I found that part fun.
Oh, so Odo made the whole thing in that though about compromise, and you ended up doing what she wanted. I'm going to point out in Jessi's example, they still live in Illinois.
Yes, that's the compromises. We still live here. There is no compromise though. Like, that's what we've had the conversation of, like, there is no it's not like, okay, well, I want Mexican and he wants pizza, so we find something else. There's no compromise. Like, you don't move halfway in between. There's no compromise in between Illinois and Virginia. It's one or the other. And, I feel like Christopher may know that battle also. So
I do know the battle, and yeah. But it's okay.
Yeah.
And
no, I mean, listen, you make it work, and the compromises are one wins and the other one just either deals with it or they don't. So,
but look, you can find a way that you can watch netball and listen to Klingon opera as well.
Yeah.
I just
a little less of a compromise than moving halfway across the country. So there's that.
The one thing I was going to throw out, and this is mainly for newbies to this show, because you wouldn't know this, but Keiko and Miles are our returning characters from the show this spinned off from, The Next Generation. So we have seen this coupling, if you watch The Next Generation for the first several seasons, to a point where we have seen them get married. We have seen them have a child. This is kind of the introduction point for a lot of people who are jumping from one show to the other. Oh, I know these two. So that's why they're front and center right now too. Not only is they're just good characters and it's an interesting story, but if you have been watching the show from the get-go, we know a lot more about them than just diving in.
Keiko's a botanist. How does that qualify her to be a teacher? Like, I mean,
Right,
Scott,
point.
you and I were at one point studying to be teachers.
And both failed at it.
Terrifying thought.
And there's a reason that we're not.
Well, as Prentice has kind of pointed out, this will be a story point that continues. So just pin that on the board for a bit and see what happens.
I'm just saying, what is her qualifications to be a teacher? Like,
her qualifications are she's bored.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But can't Commander Sisko just call Starfleet and say, hey, we need a teacher here for the 12 kids that we have? which seems like a really low number of kids.
She's probably more qualified than a lot of homeschool teachers. Like those are mothers. They just mother and they have like she asked for computers, she asked for materials. She'll be just fine. She's a scientist. She's smart. She'll be okay.
But on the starships, they have schools, right?
Do they? I don't know. This is the first time I've seen a Star Trek.
Okay, well, this is
Star
not
Trek.
this is the first time that I've watched DS9, not the first time that I've watched Trek, and I know that they have schools on board the starships. So they could have just called Starfleet and said, "Hey, we need a teacher."
So you know that because you've watched the show. What do I know?
I'm not answering that.
I just met this couple, and I think she's a little crazy, like for wanting to open up a school. It's a really bold move. It's really early in it, and it's like, I don't know. I think the school supply she's going to need most in there is like a fire extinguisher with Zog, Dog, whatever, and Jake in there together. I was a little surprised by that ask of her, and they just all went with it.
The one interesting thing, I kind of mentioned this already in a previous episode, the original series and Next Generation were kind of looked at as wagon train, an old, Western. This was referred to as riflemen, an older Western where they are place-based rather than moving. And for an old on the frontier Western, a teacher in real life would usually kind of show up and say, "Hey, I've got some books and I can speak, so I'll run the classroom." So really, it kind of fits, at least in my opinion.
We just learned that they have schools on the ships. Why would they not have a school on a station?
No one wants to be there.
Oh, that's right.
It's also in a Starfleet station.
Not on a frontier. These people aren't hunting for their own food. Like these people are flying through space.
Well, but we had the exact same interaction with Bashir and Kira in Emissary. Bashir is like, "I signed up for this because this is on the frontier. This is where I want to be because this is where the action is." And Kira's like, "Asshole, this is my home."
Right. Keep it up, sir.
Right, but there's still the presence out there, and they could, it's not like they're not that they're so far out of the realm that Starfleet doesn't have any interaction or any control with them, or maybe they are. What
the fuck is a Starfleet, first of all? Like, okay, so do you see what I'm saying? Like you're talking about
it's like the Navy. It's like the big organization. Like if you think because they're ships. So if you think that it's the Navy, like the Starfleet is like the big department of the Navy.
Okay. And then they have their own little ships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
The difference I would say to that is Starfleet, for the most part, is not military. It is exploration based. That's the one difference I would say. So you've got, in the makeup, you've got a lot of different races and empires and civilizations across the galaxy. The main ones that we have dealt with already, the Federation, which is Earth and a lot of different other races like the Vulcans and stuff that you may have heard of before. Then we've got the Cardassians, and then we've got the Bajorans. Up until a few months ago on the show, the Bajorans were a part of Cardassia, whether they liked it or not. So we're kind of learning as we go on this stuff as well, too.
Do I need to go back and watch it? Like, I don't really
watch what?
All of them. I've seen that there's 150 different shows.
Oh, no. I'm not doing
don't.
You're fine. You're fine. For one, I would not. There are people who would argue with me, but I think you're going to get much more out of this show than you would out of both the original series, because that's really dated. It's still got some nice nostalgia to it, but it's dated. And the same with TNG, Next Generation,
Scott, I think
especially
you
the first couple
mispronounced
seasons.
misogyny when you said nostalgia.
Yes.
But no, DS9, especially as it starts moving, we will see that for the first little bit of season 1, they do lean on the old stuff as a crutch a lot. And we'll point out to the newbies, hey, Keiko was in the other show. Other people will show up who are in the other show. But as it starts getting going, and as the main showrunner takes over, which is Ira Stephen Bear, he's a writer on this now, but he's not showrunning yet. It becomes its own thing. So you don't have to worry about it. The kind of ancillary stuff, if there's some confusion or if there's just something you don't have a question or you have a question on, we can answer it for you without having to worry about it too much.
Okay.
Blake?
Before I jump in here on the school part, I would love to get Jessi to watch Code of Honor from TNG season 1. I would love to get Jessi's reaction to that. Just saying.
Colonialization, racism, it's all in there. It's
It's all in
great.
there. It's all right there in
fuck
one
your colonizers.
45-minute package.
Sounds like a hard
jeez.
pass.
How many hours? Just 45 minutes?
45 minutes.
Let's do that as a special. We'll just watch it and I'll just
We may
fucking-
do
my
that
head will
because that would be
explode.
fun. But for the part with the school, though, and I think the part to keep in mind is this is not a Federation or Starfleet station. The Bajorans are not part of the Federation. They're not part of Starfleet. They invited Starfleet to come in and help them run this station after the Cardassians left. And they're picking up the pieces of their own world at this point. So Starfleet's not exactly out there in force. We even saw that in Emissary. Reinforcements were a long way off when the Cardassians showed up. And there was this race, our reinforcements going to get there in time. So it's not like they can just call up the nearest starship and say, hey, would you mind dropping off a teacher? So it was a little bit with Keiko's like, hey, I have this idea. And Sisko says, great, you have an idea. What do you need? Go do it. Because that's kind of the situation they're in with this outpost. They are in a remote part of space, and they're basically on their own with their primary objective at this point of we just found this wormhole. And anything else to that is secondary. So they're kind of doing the best they can with what they have and throwing someone into being a teacher who, at least at this point, as a botanist, does have some advanced education and can probably present some. But I would also think in the background is she may be the teacher, but look at who all you have on board. If you need someone to come in and talk about science, could you not go to Dax or any of the science team? If you need someone to talk on some of these other subjects, you've got engineers, you have scientists, you've got command crew. She could bring other people in to work on different subjects.
I think a good analogy, Blake, for that too, with the Federation is think of them as UN peacekeepers, the blue helmeted guys that come in when after a war crime has happened or after a revolution has happened. That's basically what we're talking about here. These are peacekeepers here to make sure the Cardassians don't just come right back in and cause the same shit. Jessi, what do you got?
I mean, is she any worse than Vince McMahon's wife is the head of the Department of Education?
Absolutely not.
What do you not know about education when you're just the wife of somebody that started the WWE? Moving on. You can delete that, by the way.
No, I want to make sure we cull the herd of our fan base.
Oh, let's get them started early, rile them up, and just be like, hey, fuck everybody.
Those who have come over from the other show, they know. But the other ones, we got to kind of cull the herd every now and then. So let's move over to the other kind of subplot. And that I think would be mainly Dax, but also interactions with Bashir, with Sisko. Anyone want to talk about our good friend Jadzia?
I love her.
Who is that? Who's
the girl with spots?
Oh, Dax.
That Bashir is trying to get with.
Listen, I really like Dax a lot. I'm enjoying the plot, like the character line of her / him, and the whole like question as to, well, if you know that much about her, how do you fight yourself from wanting to be with her? And I'm like, this dude knew her as a man. I'm gonna guess that when he looks at her, he still thinks that she's a man. But I really thoroughly enjoy her character a lot. I think it's interesting the depth that they have given her by her being somebody else. Clearly, I didn't get to watch that, and I'm gonna assume you guys have seen him before, but I think it's cool.
No, this is a brand new character to the show.
Okay, I think it's cool. I think the depth of like her being somebody else and being like 600 plus years old, I think that's super cool.
I'm glad you brought that up too, Jessi. One of the things I love about this show, and I'm noticing more in this rewatch, is it is so ahead of its time. And we don't even, in the 90s, we're still dealing with gay rights.
Mm-hmm.
But this show is dealing with trans rights. And how do you work with somebody who has transitioned?
Sure.
And can you still be friends? And how do you interact with them? How do you respect them? And so all of that is something that I really enjoy in this as well too. Christopher.
To Jesse's point, or how Commander Sisko knew Dax before, he stated that Dax was a father figure to him. So when the doc is saying, how can you not want to go after her? He is seeing his memories of this person are as a father figure, as someone who he would learn from, who would go out and apparently, cause some trouble with at times, because he said the stories I could tell you. And then he was like, well, I guess we can't really do that anymore. To the point, like I was making earlier about how this episode is about relationships. And now that she's in this new host, how is that going to change their relationship? I think it's a really interesting dynamic. And like Scott said, it's like a trans storyline that we're getting here.
Sure.
And, way ahead of its time.
Blake.
I actually want to push back and be very careful in saying that this is a trans storyline. And the producers would agree with me on that because they even brought it up in the documentary afterwards that this is some of the criticism they've received on the show and some of the areas where they feel they failed as well. The character of Dax is not trans.
Mm-hmm.
Dax has a symbiont that is passed from host to host to host. So it's not a matter of one person transitioning or changing a gender or even the symbiote changing that. It's a different host entirely. Yes, the memories are retained from prior hosts. So there were other shows that briefly broached the subject, but it would be several more decades before we would get true trans storylines in television. So I do want to push back and be a little careful in describing the Dax character in that way. There is another storyline I don't want to go into at this point that will get into some of the LGBTQ storylines later in the series, but it's going to be a few seasons still even before we get to that.
Yeah, but it's and I completely agree with you, Blake, but we have to take these steps, and you don't have characters, let's say in Star Trek Discovery, if you don't start the conversations 30 years ago. So I understand that they probably could have done more and they should have done more with the storylines that they had, but the fact that they're even broaching the subjects says something, in my opinion. Prentice, what do you got?
It's something I also noticed. I know from reading different things that Terry Falwell, Dax, and Avery Brooks, Cisco, they had a tense relationship in the beginning. I think Terry, because she was only 27 when she got this role, she felt fairly intimidated by Avery Brooks, and it took some time before they felt comfortable on screen, or at least she felt comfortable. And as I was watching it, in this episode, she seemed to be a lot more comfortable in interactions with him. And I noticed that from Emissary until now, it's gotten better, the kind of back and forth. So I can see she's easing into the role and then the character and interactions with Avery Brooks.
I can't praise enough Terry Farrell because I don't, like Blake, I don't want to go into many details because we haven't seen much yet, but she is playing a character who is a, hundreds of year old wise person, and she's a kid as an actor, and she's dealing with the mentality of the shows back then where the reason why she's on this show is because she is sexy. She is somebody who is attractive, and she has to deal with that too. And she is a fine actor and she handles it well, but she has to go through some crap to deal with it. Jessi.
I wouldn't have known she was 27 if you had not just said that. She carries herself a lot more mature. Not that 27 is an adult. I think 27 is when I just started feeling like an adult, like an actual adult, and I call anybody younger than that really baby adults because they really are. She's a great actress. I haven't seen much of her. This is just based off of 4 episodes, but she definitely carries herself like a much more seasoned actress. And when you said 27, I can see it because she looks young, but I wouldn't have guessed it. I would have said probably in her mid-30s, maybe.
Anybody else on this part before we jump over to the main Scooby-Doo storyline?
I agree that her character is really compelling and her history is fascinating, and I want to learn more about her. And yeah, I think her acting has been well done. I'd say that's about the age that I thought her to be, but it's weird because she is so young, but some of the things she says proves that she's centuries old or however old, really old. But also sometimes she says things that are just like, yeah, doesn't everyone know that kind of thing? So I'm really interested in learning more about her character. Is one of the most interesting to me so far.
Emily.
So this isn't necessarily about the character, but about her. Having interacted with her just a little bit at GalaxyCon last December. And honestly, she comes interacting with her, she is one of the most genuine people. When you think of actors, you're like, oh, how are they going to be? And
sure,
even small interactions with all the Star Trek actors we met last year. They were all fantastic. And I gotta share a funny story because it will embarrass my mother. So my mom was standing behind her in line to get Barry Bostwick's autograph. And she turns around and looks at my mom and says, "Oh my God, I love your glasses." And my mom was like so taken aback because if you see her in person, she's so gorgeous. She's one of those people that just like radiates beauty and not just like physical beauty. She's just like one of those people. And my mom's response was, "Oh my God, I love your face."
Amazing.
Which made her laugh. And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go like scamper off and crawl in a hole now because that was kind of embarrassing. But no, she's a really cool person. And she was at Trek Fest over the summer and she just seems so happy to be there. So yeah, she's cool. And she needs to come join us for an interview.
Can we get her and Claudia together?
Scott already had one stroke, Jessi. We don't need to risk another one with that.
Okay, but what a way to
Particular
go.
fantasy happening.
I'm willing to take one for that team. I'm just gonna say, Christopher.
Just pertaining to the episode, I think the only thing that I wrote down about the beginning when Bashir's coming in and he's kind of flirting with Dax, he says that he loves puzzles, but then he can't really figure it out when he's being played like a pawn.
The number one character trait of our good Dr. Bashir is naivete. So
he had a couple moments though in this episode where he was like smart. I was like,
where he was like smart. As opposed
like he went to
usually.
medical school.
Not actually smart, just like smart.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to see you like be a little bit smarter. So yeah.
Well, speaking of that, let's move into the main plot, which is the murder mystery, Ibudan and Odo being framed for the quote unquote death. Who wants to chat about that?
I will go, Jessi. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did not. So the whole plot was to be expected. Like it was very odd. You knew that Odo didn't do it. Like, and I don't. Yes, okay, he's a shapeshifter. Yes, he's the last one that was in there. It doesn't matter. There was nothing about it that said Odo did it. Though I think the one thing that irked me most about the whole entire thing was the scene where Odo was in the room and security was standing in front of him and people were like throwing things at him. Okay, first of all, let's shut this the fuck down. Why are we letting people stand here and throw things at us? Like they busted the glass and everybody just stood there and looked. Like when I saw Kira and the other head guy, is he commander? What is he? Commander. Okay, when I saw them walk in, I was like, yeah, we're about to shut it down. And nobody said anything. I was like, okay, kids, let's use our outdoor voice and let's like start telling people that they need to stop fucking around or they're about to find out.
Bring out Keiko's bell.
It just was like super annoying. They just like, and then they continue to let him throw stuff. Hell no. Throw something else at me and see what happens. That was the whole scene that just, of all the entire plot line, that was the thing that I remember the most.
Christopher.
I kind of wondered why he was investigating in the first place.
Yeah,
because there was circumstantial evidence at best, but there was doubt in people's mind, or not doubt, but there was plausibility in people's mind that he could have done it. So why wait until like halfway through the episode to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be investigating? Like the commander should have shut that down to begin with. I guess it could have really avoided the whole plot.
Right.
Why was he investigating in the first place? And didn't the commander just appoint someone else to investigate? How quickly they turned on him was jarring to me. And how that mob just kind of got together so quick. And seeing them write shapeshifter on the walls in his room, just think of other words that could have been, and how terrifying that kind of has to be. The mob's demanding justice, and I thought it was really poignant when Commander Sisko said, "Justice or some way to express your anger, your fear. Do not condemn this man because you're different than him." To me, that's kind of quintessential Trek, that hope about humanity and what it can be, but to the point that you've been kind of making, Scott, that this is a different Trek. Earlier in the episode, Odo says something along the lines of laws are made by the people who are in place. Justice is justice. And, that sounded very much like vengeance is vengeance. Justice is justice. And it was a very different tone than what you kind of expect from a series like this. And that's, what I got out of this.
Jessi?
Well, that whole scene, like, it gave me, oh, here we go again vibes, because I mean, we've been condemning people since they were different, since the beginning of the beginning. And it was very much like, you guys know me, my whole thing is the war on drugs and Reagan and all that shit. And we're doing that, just condemning people because of the color of their skin and based off of the drug that they use versus the white version of it. Anyway, don't get me started, please. The reason why
I think you already started yourself.
Sorry. The whole episode kind of, I mean, that it gave me those vibes, right? But the whole reason why he was investigating was just plot drama. He never should have been investigating, period. And that would have never, in my brain, that would have never happened in real life. Like, the second that you have a single fucking thing to do with anything that you're investigating, we're done. Go have a seat. We'll take care of this. We'll do our own job.
My point exactly is that he never should have been investigating.
It looks like he's having a little bit of a seizure, but it's okay. He's agreeing with you. It's fine.
Yes.
Prentice, what do you got?
I was going to chime in and kind of lift up again what Chris was speaking to about Commander Cisco, aka Avery Brooks, in front of that mob. And to me, that statement he made, it was kind of poignant for me because the mob looked like a lynch mob, right? So these people screaming, they wanted justice, they wanted to do harm to that man. So I thought it was really interesting how Cisco's the one trying to intervene and say, hey, is it because of fear, because he's different from you, that you're trying to kill him? I don't know if the directors and writers intentionally did that. It almost seemed like it was a very intentional move they did on the writing staff. However, I just thought that was a very poignant part of the episode. And to Chris, your earlier point, that statement when Odo said justice is justice, that was also a little bit chilling. That was a little bit chilling the way he said it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that described in many different circumstances where people have their own sense of justice. It could be vengeful, it could be hateful. So the way he said that was also a little bit different than where we see Odo later on as he developed as a character. Like, this version of Odo seems to be dramatically different than the Odo that's developed over time. We know that Odo is very much about justice and seeking the law and things of that nature. But the way he's kind of characterized and portrayed in this episode, to me, is a little bit different than what we see him as he progresses as a character.
Jessi?
I just don't, we've gotten into like years of justice conversations in our past podcasts. So
let's talk about the death penalty again. It was great.
I'll save everybody the pain of that.
There's an episode coming where we'll deal with that. Don't worry.
Oh boy. So I just, in this episode, and I think this is a common theme, is like they don't want justice. They want somebody to blame. Like, and that's what they were doing, was like, they just wanted somebody to pin that on. There is no innocent until proven guilty. There's just we've got in our mind that this person's going to do this and it's justice. But when in the past conversations that we've had, like, what's your definition of justice? Do you really get justice if they do something? Does it ever actually bring the person back? So it was very interesting to me that it was just very lynch mob like they wanted somebody to hang, and that was what they were doing. And it's like, how about we make sure that we're hanging the right person? Like, that's a very, sorry, that didn't come out right. But like, let's make sure that we're prosecuting the right person, because I don't like just pinning it on somebody that's not justice. So it was a very weird scene to me.
Emily?
Odo's response about justice being justice is really interesting given what some of us know. But he's also trying to shift gears from Cardassian rule, where that was how they dealt with justice.
Right.
Because it wasn't really justice. It was torture and murder and being horrible. So I do find it interesting how he says it, because it feels like there's still a lot of that Cardassian influence happening there. And he's also angry because he feels like they don't trust him. You should not be investigating a crime in which you are implicated. It doesn't matter who you are. It just looks really, really bad. So, he's struggling with the new position. He's not being trusted. Now there's a mob and he's angry. And I think he's wanting something that would make him feel safer. Justice is justice. Came out a little more on the hostile side.
Odo's got a little bit of fascism kind of built in. Just a little bit. And that's, again, you're right. I mean, the Cardassians they're designed to be fascists, and they ran Bajor like a mining colony, and Odo worked for them. So also we don't hear much about it here in this episode, but the whole the mob turned really quick on Odo. That mob was mainly Bajoran, and they've dealt with Odo before.
Yeah,
So
that was
Is that a spoiler?
not really. No. It's
no.
because we've already heard that. We've heard that Odo was around before the Federation took over. And the only reason why he's still there is because Cisco wants him to stay. He's one of the few that Cisco wants to stay because he knows the station. He's worked with Kira. He is a good lawman, but
He can literally turn himself into furniture and spy on people.
It's helpful.
by the way, Shannon, his action figure does come with the bucket. So
Oh my God, does it really? You're making that.
one of the accessories.
Oh my
because I
God.
used to have the Playmates is a bucket.
That's perfect.
But yeah, so I mean, again, we're tiptoeing around the old bees are because the newbies haven't seen all this stuff yet. But no spoilers. But I'll just say that this is Odo's character, and it's very fascinating to watch his arc as we go because one, it's a really wonderful story and I think it's one of the strongest character arcs in all of Star Trek, not just Deep Space Nine. But again, I can't praise him enough. Rene Auberjonois was an amazing actor, and he's able to play this so well, even behind this makeup, which, by the way, after it was all said and done, he kept his face on his mantle. So
Only mildly serial killerish.
Right.
yeah, when his part of the show was over, whenever that may be, he tore his face off and gave it to the showrunner and said, here's my face. Have a nice day. Blake?
Just to go off what you just said too, as far as character development, I will say probably hands down DS9 long term is one of the better of the Trek shows when it comes to the character development, the depth of the characters that they put into this show. Because we've seen subsequent series, there's Voyager, which we've commented on and made fun of before, that there's characters on that don't change from season 1 to season 7.
Hey, Harry Kim changes a lot. He goes from an ensign to an ensign.
Which they still make fun of in Lower Decks. I mean, the character is the same in Lower Decks as it was in Voyager proper. We've commented on Discovery. Part of the issue there is it wasn't until season 3 that we actually got to know the bridge crew.
I still can't name the bridge crew. I've watched the whole damn show. I can't tell you who the bridge crew is. It's the one girl with the cybernetic stuff. I don't know what her name is. It's Detmer, but yeah.
But yeah, this is probably, other than Strange New Worlds, which had a lot already built for it because of the nature of what Strange New Worlds is, with the exception of that, this is probably the best of the Star Trek shows when it comes to actually developing and growing characters from start to finish.
Yeah. Yes. And I think a lot of that praise, and we'll talk more about it as we go through the show, the ones who were with us with Grey 17, Babylon 5 was much more continual episode to episode, even from the beginning. DS9 is not that way. For one, the main showrunner right now and co-creator Rick Berman does not believe in continuing storylines because it's syndication. He wants you to be able to come in episode 1 or episode 20 and be able to understand what's going on. That will shift and change, and we'll talk about that as we go. But I do think Michael Piller, who passed away many years ago, but was also the other co-creator of this show, I think he did a really good job of trying to understand that this is a space station that can't go anywhere. The consequences matter. Things will continue on episode to episode, whereas the Enterprise can just warp to another planet and have another story. They can't do that here, and that's kind of ingrained into the show. Shannon, what do you got?
I'm really glad that you say that this has strong character arcs, no matter what character you're talking about, because basically the reason I'm on this podcast is because I listened to Grey 17 and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I really do like sci-fi stuff more than I thought. And then come to find out, JMS is just a freaking genius. So I'm a little leery, like this is in my next deep dive into something pretty heavy sci-fi. So I know it's not as serialized and it's not going to be the same, but I'm glad to know it's not going to be like that, like episode by episode, that there's still going to be some growth.
Yeah, so. And I think there's definitely an arc of the show, not so much the plot, but an arc of the development and production of the show that we will see. There's actually literally an episode, and I'll call it out when we get there, where Rick Berman, the other co-creator I mentioned who runs Star Trek at this point, checks out and says, I'm going to worry about Voyager and screw that show up. So I'm out. And when that happens, Ira Stephen Bear, who is a writer on the show now and a producer, but not the lead producer, the executive producer, he will step in and run the show from then on. And that is where I would make that connection to JMS has a vision on Babylon 5. Ira Stephen Bear has a vision with Deep Space Nine, and I think he's an amazing writer. So we'll see his stuff intertwined here for the first few seasons, but we'll get to a point where we'll call it out that this is where the show pivots and where the heads of the studio just stop caring. And when they stop caring, they're able to play more.
I'll just point out, Berman got his start working for Paramount Television under Michael Eisner. Yeah. And I think he also learned how to fuck up an entire franchise from Michael Eisner also. So
I will dog on Berman like any other. And there are some, he is just not exactly a good person. And we'll talk about that too on this show. But the dude was able to make Star Trek run for 20 years without fail. We owe a lot to him, even though he is a prick.
Yeah, but then he crashed it into the ground too.
Well, I know he did. He definitely killed it for about 10 years. I agree.
I think I know what you're referring to. And I have opinions.
Have you watched Enterprise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have strong opinions on that one.
Okay. Well, that's Rick Berman. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Jessi is completely checked out.
Yeah, this is great.
Like,
I'm just going to fucking play my game. You guys let me know when I need to be here.
Yeah, Jessi, what have we done?
We'll go into questions and predictions here in a moment. The one thing I just want to mention, because I did mention on the front end, as we're recording this, there is a new Star Trek quote unquote movie coming out here, Section 31, which is a Star Trek movie that is coming out on Paramount Plus, is dropping. Newbies, don't watch it. I don't know if the plot is going to interact with Deep Space Nine at all or not, but we as the old bees will gatekeep for you and watch it and let you know. But I also think for those who are listening who are interested to see our take on some of the newer Treks, depending on if it intersects with DS9 or at all or not, we will maybe talk about Section 31 on a side bonus episode as well. We've already had this conversation about Star Trek Picard Season 3, and we have told the newbies not to watch Season 3 because that absolutely intersects with DS9.
Right, because I asked you if I was allowed to watch it or not.
Yeah, you're not. No. You can watch the first 2 shitty seasons. That's fine. Don't watch the good season of Season 3.
I know, the first 2 episodes have been a slog.
Well, it doesn't get any better until the season you can't watch. Yeah. That's when it gets better.
Yay!
I'm not looking forward to it, but we'll see what happens. Prentice is over here shaking his head, so I'm going to assume he's not looking forward to it either.
I'm not. I'm going to watch it just for completion.
Like watching a train wreck, you got to.
The train wreck. From the trailers I've seen of Section 31, I said, this is not Star Trek. And I think the showrunner now of Star Trek is worse than Rick Berman.
Yeah,
I think
Alex Kurtzman. Mm-hmm.
Alex Kurtzman, yeah, he's running into the ground. I'm like, my God, like you had a chance with Discovery, and then after the 3rd season, that tanked. And I saw the preview for this. This does not. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that old head to say everything new is bad, but this looks bad. So I'm glad they took it from being a series to like just a movie. So we only have to do it one movie and that's it.
We got 2 hours and we don't have to worry about it anymore. I will say, and this is the last thing I'll say on this because this is definitely, the newbies are kind of like glossing over right now. If you haven't watched Strange New Worlds, you should, because that is a really freaking good show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I have watched that, and that's okay, right?
Yeah,
there's you can watch Strange New Worlds.
I have watched that one. That's why I was like, maybe I won't, could do this one. That one is really good. I think Jessi could even feel that.
And I still think a lot of the issue with the newer shows is the complete clusterfuck that has been the Redstone family and what to do with Paramount in general.
Yeah.
With the, will we sell it? Will we not? We're going to sell it to this company. Well, now we're going to sell it to that one. I'm curious to see what happened once Ellison takes over and finally gets in there and straightens this shit out.
It will be very interesting. That's for sure.
Emily, have you seen Strange New Worlds?
I've watched the first season. I haven't finished it. I'm hesitant to start any new series until it's complete because I don't trust that they'll keep it going.
It just takes them forever.
I know.
And for better or for worse, there's a lot less episodes. There's no more 26 episode seasons, which as we get into a couple of these seasons, you're going to be thinking, oh shit, maybe
They could have combined them down.
There's some fillers.
We could have skipped a whole entire fucking season of the last show that we watched. So,
oh, just wait until we watch Move Along Home.
No,
just wait.
Shut up. It's amazing. Don't scare them. It's fantastic.
I'm a Moraine. I
I'm
almost
scared.
called this podcast I'm a Moraine. I almost did, but then I was like, no, because
no one will listen to it.
Okay, let's get back to Deep Space Nine. We'll ask our newbies before we kick them out if they have any lingering questions or predictions about what will be coming down the pipeline for this show. So we'll go over to Jessi first. Questions, predictions.
no questions. One prediction. I can say with a straight face, something's gonna happen and blow up with the school later in the season. Thank you, Prentice. We're done. I
thought you were almost going to make a Nicole joke. Something's going to happen.
No. Somebody's going to ship somebody else and the stuff and the things. But no, I don't have any.
I agree with you, Jessi. There's going to be some major stuff happening in the school. Most likely Jake and his little pal. They're going to blow some shit up.
Things are happening.
Something crazy.
Those desks are not bolted to the ground. You saw like they were kind of wobbly.
I'm still hoping they can get that replicator going so they can get all the snacks they need since they're forced to wear spandex.
I didn't even notice the spandex, Prentice. Thank you. I'm going to have to now. I'm not going to be able to unsee it.
Oh, don't worry. Jake and Nog wear the spandex like no others.
I'm not going to.
Which we haven't talked about Aaron Eisenberg yet because we've only met him briefly so far, but he's another one that we'll be talking about a lot. Okay, Christopher, questions, predictions?
One, I wanted to talk about the ending of the episode and how. And
we didn't actually talk about the ending.
We didn't.
And I just wanted to be done.
And how they figured out.
Please put us out of this misery.
That it was a clone, right? And how they treat, they sent him to live on Bajor, right? Where that doesn't happen in like other treks. Like they don't necessarily treat clones or non-sentient beings as equals, where the way that they treat augments, the way that they treat, I can't think of the word, whatever the hell Data is.
Android.
An android, right? The way that they treat clones and how they treated, this clone where they said, yeah, go live on Bajor, everything's good. That wouldn't have happened in other shows, I don't think. And I just, how do you, the ethics of how do you treat a clone? Is it a being? Is it a person?
You brought something up I thought about because that was weird how they handled that given the eugenics situation in the Federation that we learned about later, but it's stated through the Geographic Con, all that stuff that according to what they said, and I would think that the clone will be under the same umbrella as eugenics, that the way they handled that should not have happened in that episode. That clone would not have been allowed to just walk freely. But because it's not the Federation technically, I just thought about that. It may be different on Bajor, but that was kind of weird the way they handled that.
Well, I would think the clone would be different than genetically manipulated because everything they implied was it's just a straight clone of Ibadan, not a genetically enhanced Khan situation where we've got super Ibadan running around now.
I'm just disappointed that none of you made the happy ending massage joke with Ibadan.
Oh, I actually wrote that in my notes.
Of course you did.
He did not get a happy ending.
What was that? Where is it?
Where is it?
I just love you've got the next generation, which has the holodecks for you can recreate all these worlds and environments.
You can wear tights and be Robin Hood.
And you can be Robin Hood. And then we get to Deep Space Nine and it's screw it. We have massage parlors.
I wrote in my notes, I said, who killed Ibadan during happy ending massage? Was it Odo? Could it be suicide?
All right. He took it off the rails this one. I'm very proud.
Oh, God damn it.
I feel so much pride.
Were we on the rails?
No.
Okay.
We never are on the rails.
A little bit.
To wrap up the end conversation that I tried to not have us do, but here we are. Blake, you kind of called this out already. Michael Piller and Ira Stephen Bear both worked on this episode, and they both have said that it was a little weak. They really didn't bring it in for a landing. The fact that they pumped a lot into this episode. Again, there's more than one A and B plot. There's a couple other things going on. So it feels rushed, but also there's a lot of like, does it really make sense? Is it questionable? It's not, and it ends literally with a Scooby-Doo reference at the end. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Do the clones have feelings?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
They're clones, right? They're
yeah.
Like,
They're
don't
just
scoff at me, first of all.
no, I'm not scoffing.
They're not you, Jessi. They have feelings. They're not you.
Yeah, they're just not born normally, but I mean, really genetically, they're exactly the same.
They're still people.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody asked how they were supposed to be treated. Well, if they have feelings and they're like people, they need to be treated like people.
Right, but that goes into the whole, which this is the first series that you're watching, so you know.
Piss off, Christopher. This is the first time you've watched it also.
This is the first time that I've watched this.
I know he seems very
series.
un-newbie like for being a newbie.
Right.
It's
Fuck
tough.
off. First of all, I have to adjust to Emily not being a noob. And now you're gonna fucking start your bullshit too. Don't. Okay. Listen, as your ex-wife, I will not fucking stand for this.
That's gonna start the message boards going.
Oh God.
Okay.
That was
You see what
fantastic.
happens when you fucking just get me going? God damn it.
This is what happens when you fuck a stranger in the Alps.
Okay.
Not know what that
For those who
means.
got that reference, I love
Nope.
you.
I don't.
A stranger in the Alps, because it was edited. It was Meet a Stranger in the Alps.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's true. When you meet a stranger in the Alps.
Prentice, I'm sorry.
You're right.
I'm
stand
sorry.
corrected.
I know I say sorry all the time and I'm not, but I'd like to.
Man, I'm not.
Hey, it's okay. Listen, it's okay. Listen, this is funny to me, and it's hilarious. This is more than worth everything. Hey, this is great. This is great.
Okay. Well, you guys heard it here. Okay. Did you learn your lesson, Chris?
No.
Did you want to finish that statement that you started?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, please. I'm sorry I interrupted you. It was so rude of me.
I'm used to it.
Okay, Jesus.
Read into that as you may.
Are we done?
I don't know. Okay, so Shannon
So-
is giving me her questions, predictions.
I gave you a question. Did I give a prediction?
I don't know at this point.
Yeah, you
All right.
Mike is now drinking out of the bottle.
I predicted that the school was gonna have major accidents, and I think that it doesn't look good for Odo now, but I think he'll become an integral part of the crew and have some friends, I hope, because I like him, even though the pale thing.
Discriminating against a guy who can't, not be in a pail.
Oh my.
Like, just pick something cooler to be in. Buy a pail.
That bucket's going to have a lot of plot points over the next few years. I just want you to know that.
Oh no.
Oh my God, I cannot believe that. Okay.
Christopher, do you have any questions and predictions?
Do I have any predictions? I want to see how Quark and Odo, their relationship, because there was a point when Quark offered to help Odo, and we've seen in earlier episodes where he does not trust him at all, and so how does that relationship change? And then I had something else. Yeah, are the Ferengi sexist? Like how sexist are the Ferengi? Because
Can I explain this one?
Emily, feel free. I don't feel.
All right.
I think you can spoil the Ferengi for us.
Well, because they talk about next gen, right? So they can know how shitty the Ferengi are, right?
One question. Is the Ferengi Quark?
yes,
Yes, and Ram
Okay,
and
thank
Nog,
you.
the big-eared people.
They are a conservative's wet dream.
Jesus Christ.
That's how they structure their society.
I am getting very much Reagan and trickle down economics.
Oh, so now we've had wet dream and trickle down. Goddamn.
Nope. Not today, Jesus.
Things that we know about the Ferengi if you come into this show after watching other treks, which will not spoil anything. They are extremely capitalistic. They believe in profit above anything else. And women cannot be involved in business. And women should not wear clothes. And women should not be heard.
Chew the food.
Yes, they chew the food for the men. Yes, they are.
What? Okay. You know what?
She's not wrong.
Somebody fucking wrote this too. Because let me tell you, like, oh, it's a big joke, but somebody feels like that out there. Fuck, they were on our podcast last time. So I'm not chewing fucking nothing for anybody, fuckers. Okay. You got me very worked up today, and I need to go take a nap. Thank you.
Hey, Grandma.
Jesus.
Anything else, Christopher, you would like to add?
Anything else you'd like to start, Christopher?
No, I think I'm good at this point.
Great. Wonderful.
He's gonna go ahead and take a pass. We'll move on. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and end it there with our newbies, and we will answer these couple questions and predictions when we go and meet the prophets after we let the newbies go. See, I remember the actual thing this time.
Oh, that was another question that I had. Who the hell is he doing in the cloak? In the
More
cloak?
questions for you, Christopher. You're
What
done.
the hell is he doing? The cloak? What?
No, who is the guy in the cloak?
Oh, that was Ibudan.
Yeah.
Did you miss the whole Scooby-Doo thing?
They Scooby-Dooed that shit,
He
Christopher.
missed the whole plot.
Okay, because he looked like a guy in an earlier episode.
He was
so.
wearing a mask.
Yes.
You didn't miss that? The whole thing? Okay.
So Ibudan and cloned himself. That's who got.
Christopher was
that
so
they-
distracted by the happy ending massage plot that he just stopped right there.
So the guy
Pretty
who got
much.
the happy ending was one of the clone. When he got the happy ending, Ibudan wore a mask and cloned himself again to make sure he could kill himself again if he needed to. It's not that good of a plot, but that's what it is.
Okay, well, that's why I couldn't figure it out, because it wasn't really worth paying attention to.
Weirdly.
So there were
Who
three
invited this fucking
Ibudans.
kid? Whose idea was this?
Well, you married him.
A long time ago, okay? I'm trying to forget.
It's okay. Blake's still drinking out of the bottle, so you're fine. Okay, let's go ahead and end it there. Unless, Christopher, would you like this to explain any more of the
You want
story
anything
to
else,
you?
Chris? God damn it.
Love you too, Jessi.
We'll go ahead and leave our newbies there, and we'll come back next week to discuss the next episode, which will be Babel. Not Babel, Babel.
I thought it was Babe. Okay.
No, it's not Babe.
I
There
try
are no
not to
pigs.
read so that I don't spoil shit. So I just like glance.
I
and keep
try
going.
not to read.
Some of our fans from our old show are going to love that line from you, Jessi.
So again, we'll be here next week to talk about Babel. And if you do not want to be spoiled, this is where you can jump off with the newbies as well. And please remember to like, subscribe, follow, join the conversation on our social medias. All links are down below. And if you can, please, please, please leave a review. Apple is the best review place to go, even though they suck, because that is what drives the algorithm. So if you can go there and leave a review, that'd be great. If not, we're also available on Audible and Spotify. And like, subscribe, do all the stuff. And we'll be back here next week. We'll come back after the end credits for our spoiler conversation, which will be, I'm sure, exciting.
Riveting.
Until next week, I've been Scott, and with me has been
Emily.
Christopher.
Just
Like,
Shannon.
And Jessi. And this will be my last episode. So it was nice knowing all of you.
That's not true.
Christopher's
true.
taking my place.
So Christopher also, Keiko gets the bell so she can ring the kids into school. And there are desks at the school. And I'm just trying to explain the entire show to you at this point.
Just in case you fucking missed it. God damn, we just did a whole podcast on this episode. And in the last 2 minutes, you finally figured out the plot. What is happening?
Thank you for listening to Especially the Lies, a Deep Space Nine podcast. You can find all the places to listen to and watch this podcast by searching for Especially the Lies on your podcast app or on YouTube. We want to hear from you, so join the conversation at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review where you are listening to or watching this podcast. Especially the Lies is not affiliated with, and the podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Paramount or any other owners of the Star Trek copyright. All clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of the respected copyright holders. They are included here for purposes of review, and no infringement is intended.
Why have you brought me here? Show yourselves. What do you want?
The Cisco has returned to us.
He arrives with questions.
There are always questions.
Welcome back to Meeting the Prophets, the spoiler section for this podcast. So if you have not watched past A Man Alone, or just can't remember what happened, I'm looking at you, Mike, who's not on the show today. Go ahead and leave now, or be forever spoiled. So let's go into the questions and predictions. Shannon had the most in saying that she thinks that, well, actually Jessi did too, because both of them read into Prentice a little bit too much and said, oh, the school's going to blow up. Would you like to talk to us about that, Prentice?
I mean, look, the situation will blow up politically, but the actual school will not blow up. So let's get that clear. But it's going to be
It does.
It does.
Oh, that's right. It does. Think about, you know what? I pulled a Chris. Sorry about that. So yeah,
I pulled a Chris.
This will be a running gag. I pulled a Chris. You're absolutely right. It did blow up. I forgot all about that.
But they think Jake and Nog are gonna do shit that's gonna screw up the school. They have no idea what's coming.
Yeah, well, and I actually made the mistake going into this episode because I haven't watched the show in a while. I thought this was our first Kai Wynn episode because I thought, oh, Keiko to the school. That means the Kai is going to be involved. No, she's not here yet. I was waiting for my other Nazi to show up, and she hasn't yet.
Thanks, Karen.
Other thing, Scott, you ruined the reveal that the Ferengis don't like the women to wear clothes. I wanted them to find that out. You don't really hear about that in TNG.
That's true.
I wanted them to see that play out with Moogie and the rest of them. I just think that is the craziest thing. Me and my ex-girlfriend, we laugh all the time when they say, you clothe your female? It is something about that. They wrote that. I'm like, this is such a sexist but funny take on hyper-capitalism.
I'm looking forward to. I'm interested to see how people handle the Ferengi episodes because there are some that are good and some that are, oh my God, can we just let it die, please?
I'm with you.
The one where Iggy Pop is walking around with a zombie is one that comes ahead right now. It's like, okay,
that one's so amazing though. It's so good.
They leave him on Terak Nor bouncing off the wall.
Listen, that episode was interesting. Far more interesting than the 4th and 5th season of Discovery. I'll just tell you that.
Okay, so yes, we'll be discussing the school more for sure. And I think along with that, the whole Keiko O'Brien piece definitely is something that will continue to go throughout the show. And the fact that Keiko is not happy and Miles is suffering a lot in this show.
We don't have an idea. Miles must suffer.
Yes, we haven't had one of those episodes yet. They're coming.
Plenty of them. But did we notice? I don't think we talked about this. This is one of the first times that Rom was really kind of featured, sort of in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he was portrayed, I just thought, wow, I didn't realize he was kind of so cardboard-ish in this episode, and he developed into a great character later on. Even the way he talked, I saw him at the end when he was saying to Nog that stay away from the human boy. The way he said it in his voice, I'm like, that doesn't even sound like Rom. So it's interesting to see his introduction and what eventually becomes of Rom throughout the series.
Well, and they commented on that with this because the production order, the guy that plays Rom commented he hadn't even got the voice down or any of the mannerisms that he would have as Rom. So this was still because even in Emissary he was there, but he was credited as Ferengi pit boss. And so he was still playing Rom basically as that with no direction of what the character was or would become. So I would almost argue, yeah, we've got Rom in name, but we don't have Rom as a character yet.
Yeah, Max Grodenchuk, who plays him, really instills what Rom becomes. And the one cool thing that we know based on a lot of interviews and stuff is the Ferengi actors, specifically Shimmerman, Eisenberg, and Grodenchuk, would meet at Armin Shimmerman's house and work on the lines, work on the Ferengi interactions, the culture. They really did build this themselves I mean, the writers obviously help too, but this core of actors who are Ferengi really built out these characters for themselves.
And I think it helps, since they are all family, that them working so closely together to build those characters also helps make the relationship between them feel more realistic.
Yes.
It
Yes.
doesn't feel like complete acting. Like there's some natural aspects to it.
Well, those sessions even went to not just the regular cast, but when they had guest stars come on as Ferengi.
Yeah.
That he would have invite them to come to those too. So we'll get Jeffrey Combs in one of his umpteen roles in Star Trek with Liquidator Brunt, with the guy that plays the Negas. They'll all end up going through those sessions.
Yeah. But Jeffrey Combs comes in multiple different characters. Will they recognize him when he comes up as different people?
No, they won't. They won't.
No, they won't.
They
Christopher
won't.
didn't even know who the guy was in the cloak.
Oh my God, dude lost the plot.
Let's make a pact here, because it's going to be years from now before we get to this point. When we get to the scene where Jeff Combs plays all his characters in the same episode, let's just let it go and see if anyone notices.
Yeah, because
You
I
got
don't want
Wayoon, you got Brunt.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of them recognize him. And it's so interesting because he's one of those actors where you like cover him in makeup and you're like, I still know it's you.
Yeah, because you've watched like Reanimator 15 million times.
I've never seen that.
You've never seen Reanimator?
It is on my to watch list.
Oh my God. Okay.
I know.
Moving on.
Anywho's.
Anybody have anything else they want to add spoiler-wise with this episode? We don't have many little, aside from what we've already talked about, we don't have many foreshadowing, except for, I think the Odo thing will come out more as we deal with the fact that he's having to work through some issues with him being a former fascist.
No one really talked about like game predictions for his arc. And I know like I tried to step cautiously around that this episode, because I think him being alone on the station for so long really plays into what we see in the future.
I think they're going to like the relationship that builds between him and Quark as well.
Oh, for sure, because it's amazing.
Yeah, those two are the closest things to best friends, even though they have this contentious relationship due to Quark being Quark and Odo being the lawman, but they really do have that relationship that builds into quite the dynamic all the way to the very end of the show, where you've got Quark basically going, I know that man loves me.
I can see it written on the back of his face.
No one has shipped Odo and Kira yet. I'm wondering if at some point Nicole will, how long it'll take her.
No, we haven't had much interaction with Odo and Kira yet. We'll get there. We'll get there. No one's shipped Bashir and Garrick yet either, but we'll get there.
And I can't wait till Laxwana shows up and Odo goes to goo in her dress. That'll get Shannon's desire to not have a bucket going.
Oh, I can't wait for the comments on that one.
I just got a 3D printer for Christmas, and I am going to print Odo's bucket, because I'm sure I can find that, and I will print it so Shannon can have her own bucket. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and end this lovely conversation there. Remember to like, subscribe, follow, and if you have any spoilers that you want to discuss, don't put them on our social medias, but send them. I don't know. We'll figure that out. So don't do it on our social media, because the newbies are there, and we want to make sure that they are not spoiled. So until next week, when we talk about Babel and that one, or Babel, and that should be an interesting conversation. I've been Scott, and with me has been
Emily.
Blake.
Just
click all the buttons, like, subscribe, follow, do all the shit. Thanks. Bye.
To be quite honest about it, I was in a pail in the back of my office when Ibudan was killed.